Hey everybody, welcome back to the new school year. I'm looking forward to teaching you guys a bunch and learning a lot of biology in class. So this is an online lecture. You can play this as many times as you want to. You can pause anytime you want to. But I am going to go pretty fast because I want to try to keep this every lecture that we do around 10 minutes. So we may break it up a little bit, but hopefully we're right around 10 minutes. So our first topic of the year is going to be chemistry. We're going to start small in this class, and then we're going to start building and building and building. Eventually we will be talking about living organisms like humans and their anatomy and that sort of thing. But we're going to start small first, and we're going to look at a quick review of chemistry, what you learned a lot about last year, particularly atoms and bonding. So we're first going to look at atomic structure. Structure of an atom contains three major parts, and maybe four if you consider the nucleus as well. Those three major parts are protons, neutrons, and electrons. For the next quiz or test in this unit, you guys should be prepared to draw an atom, a particular atom, and I'll provide you the necessary information, but you should be able to draw, for example, a carbon atom with all the protons and all the neutrons and all the electrons, and you should be able to label those parts. So here are a few examples. Again, you can pause if it's too fast. So next we are going to look at protons and their characteristics and neutrons and electrons and their characteristics. So protons are positively charged. So they contain a positive charge, and they're contained in the center of the atom, which is called the nucleus. Also, a little history, you probably remember this from last year. Protons were discovered by Ernest Rutherford about 100 years ago. Next, neutrons. Neutrons are neutral. They have no charge, but they are contained in the center of the atom in the nucleus. Neutrons were discovered by James Chadwick in 1932. Electrons. Electrons are negatively charged, and they are not in the nucleus. They actually rotate around the nucleus in almost a cloud-like formation. Electrons were discovered by J.J. Thomson in 1897. Electrons determine properties of an atom, which is important, and that's going to lead us into bonding. These electrons and the way they interact with other electrons determines what type of bond is going to form between the atoms. So we'll look at that more later. The nucleus. So the nucleus is the center of the atom, and it contains all the protons and the neutrons of the atom itself. It also contains almost 99 or more, about 99%, if not more, of the atom's mass is contained in the nucleus. So the electrons that rotate around the nucleus are very, very light. So most of the mass of the atom is in the nucleus. And the nucleus was discovered also by Ernest Rutherford in 1911. Now, next topic. Isotopes. Isotopes are unique because when you compare two different, not different, but two of the same atom, they can be isotopes of one another because of the number of neutrons. So an isotope is an atom that contains the same number of protons as other atoms, but a different number of neutrons. For example, carbon. Carbon contains 6 protons and 6 neutrons, so we call that carbon-12. But there are also other carbons out there like carbon-14, so it has 6 protons just like every other carbon atom, but it has 8 neutrons, so it's different. And this is used a lot in what's called carbon dating. And there are other examples of isotopes out there that we'll discuss more in class. Next, we're going to look at the basic, because this is biology, we're going to focus a lot on the life elements, or shorthand, the acronym is called SNOPS, or CHNOPS. They stand for different elements that make up most of the organic molecules in living things. So basically, these elements make up a majority of what you are made out of, and any other living thing. So let's go through them. I'm sure you can probably guess them without me telling you them. But C stands for carbon, H stands for hydrogen, O stands for oxygen, N stands for nitrogen, P stands for phosphorus, and S stands for sulfur. So these elements make up a majority of all living things. The vocabulary term that was going to be used as we go along this class, compound is a substance that's formed by a chemical combination of two or more elements. Now we're going to look more at electron shells and their characteristics, and then that's going to lead us into how bonds are formed. So, electron shells. Quick reminder, the atomic number of an element is the number of protons and of that particular atom that's contained in that atom. And electrons vary in the amount of energy they possess, and they occur at certain energy levels, or the way we call them electron shells. So these shells can contain a very specific amount of electrons, and those shells determine the characteristics that the atom has with other atoms. So electrons are placed in electron shells according to these rules. So the first shell can only hold up to 2 electrons, and then each shell thereafter can hold up to 8. And as we get, we're not really going to talk about anything more than 8. It does occur, but the elements we're going to be looking at in this class doesn't matter. So I'm just assume it's 8, and I'm going to use that for the rest of the class. So 2 in the first shell, and then 8 thereafter. So here's some examples. So hydrogen has an atomic number 1, which means only 1 proton, and that means 1 neutron. Carbon has 6 protons, so 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and then 6 electrons, as you can see. Nitrogen has 7, oxygen is 8, and so you can see that there. You will probably be expected to write, when you draw the atom, like carbon, you will be asked to draw the electron shells as well. So you should be aware that it's 2 and then 8 thereafter. Now, these electron shells, like I said before, determine how the atom interacts with other atoms. So the reason being is because these atoms, their main goal is to fill their outermost electron shell. So here we want, like hydrogen really wants to fill this electron shell, and it can't do it because it's not filled, only has 1. It needs another one. So hydrogen is a prime candidate to try to interact with another atom to try to get this electron filled, and that's kind of the basis of what we're going to talk about when we discuss ionic bonding and covalent bonding. All right, so you can go ahead and check out to see and guess how many each of these is going to want to gain in order to become fulfilled or completely filled. So electron or chemical bonds. So these chemical bonds, like I stated, there's 2 main ones that we're going to talk about right now, and there's another one we're going to talk about in a few days, which is hydrogen bonding. But the 2 main ones that occur in living things are ionic bonds and covalent bonds. So an ionic bond is when 2 ions transfer electrons. So there's going to be a transfer of electrons, which is different from sharing electrons. A transfer is me giving you an electron. Examples of this are NaCl, calcium chloride, and potassium oxide. So here's a picture of that occurring again. The sodium, or the chloride in this case, is basically taking the electron from sodium, and in this way they stick together. Here's another example again of sodium chloride. So the sodium constantly tries to get away, but the chloride's too powerful and basically creates this attraction between the 2 elements. Here's another example. This is unique. Ionic bonds, when they're formed, create this unique structure called a crystal lattice. And it will create, so when you look, this is salt under the microscope. So when you look at salt under the microscope, it's not circles, it's actually very strong, very unique squares. Covalent bonds. Covalent bonds are a bond that's formed by sharing electrons. So you can see some examples of that here. And so in this case, both of these atoms need one electron to fulfill their electron shell, to completely fill it and therefore be happy. So they kind of work together and say, hey, I'll take yours, you take mine, and we share them that way. And we're both happy and we're both content with this arrangement. So this is what a covalent bond is. It's basically sharing, and that sharing creates an attraction between the two atoms that create a bond. So again, looking at this, two oxygen atoms will bond together to form oxygen gas because they now, when they're together, have a filled electron shell. And that's it, folks. Thanks, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.